Welcome back, boys. And today we are talking about season 1 of the live action One Piece anime adaptation. You're probably going to be asking the good, the bad, the okay, and my final thoughts on the series overall. So let's just get into it. First thing, the good. Let's just start off with this show looks amazing. I love the way it looks. The CGI is always popping off. Sometimes it looks a little iffy, but then like the important shots that they use, like for when they introduce like a Sea King and Luffy's backstory, that looks amazing. It definitely does keep the spirit of the show alive while also going over like plot points that honestly don't mean too much to the overall plot, but they're just like nice things to have. And we'll get into there about more about like the okay things that I'm fine with. But we're still talking about the good. So what else is the good? The Straw Hats. I love that they don't instantly go, oh, I'm gonna fully respect you, Luffy, you're my captain. They don't do that. He kind of has to earn the respect of the crew, which I was like, I'm okay with that change. Honestly, for live action, it makes sense for them to be like, you know what, I don't like you so far, but we're gonna be around you. You know, like, I'm okay with that. Garp's early introduction, and he's more of an active character. I thought that was done very well. I think that the actor that plays him also does a very good job. Does he play the role of Garp well? Like Garp from the anime and manga? Different character, different interpretation. I'm okay with it so far. We're just gonna have to let them cook, as you would say. I like how they introduce Arlong and have more in the role of the story for the live action. He gets a lot more screen time than I was expecting. He even shows up to Baratier of all places. And I'm like, damn, that's honestly really cool. Because they changed like key moments that were supposed to happen in the anime and manga, and then they have to figure out how to get from their point A to point B. So yeah, Nami also, her characterization is also changed, so she doesn't leave the crew. She is then kidnapped, and I'm like, I'm still 50-50 about that, but that's okay with me. We're still talking about like Arlong's introduction. I like it. He's also like more well known. Like he has interactions with Buggy, is what I think is pretty cool, and Buggy's even scared of him, which I think is interesting. Shanks, like just Shanks' actor, I really like. Just from like the one still frame where he was like, boom, I was like, hey, we don't know, we have to let them cook, and they cook so well. I love the accent that they give for Shanks. I just wish that the live action was just a little bit more goofy, because he's like, oh, Luffy's been kidnapped. Instead of shit, Luffy got kidnapped. You know, like there's a different reaction, which I'm like, okay, that's fine. I just think it's funny where he's like, wait, where'd he go? Like, is that the pacing is lightning fast. It is kind of like a double-edged sword, but the way they show the East Blue Saga, you're not really on an island for too long. Like, you're there for an episode or two, or then you go on to the next one. I really like Buggy's role in the story. He's shown a lot more, and he's shown as more like a tool for the adventure for East Blue, which I do like. Alright, this is where we start to mention the bad. I'm trying not to be negative for this review, but it's just that like I'm very passionate about this story that's told. So let's begin. One of the bads. They shortened Sanji's goodbye to Zeph, and and a lot of the crew of the Baratier 2 don't get a lot more screen time because Baratier is also it's a huge arc, and they cut out Don Krieg's story. And I'm like, dang, I really like Gein's story with Sanji, and he shows up in the live action, but then he just kind of disappears. So he's like, oh, my crew died. And so we don't really get the whole like Gein also feeling like he shouldn't betray his captain, which is Don Krieg. Don Krieg is killed in the live action, so we don't really get Luffy versus Don Krieg. So yeah, that's kind of another thing that I'm like, I really wish they didn't cut that, but it's to get to Arlong Park. But Arlong Park, unfortunately for me, feels a little too rushed. I feel like it should have been a 3 or even 4-parter, just because like how grand the story is, how you really need to feel the connection with the villagers. Genzo's and Nami's relationship in Arlong Park feels non-existent. He just feels like the mayor of the town. And I'm like, damn, they cut that part out, like that essential relationship. And another thing that I don't like in the adaptation is that we don't even get Nami saying goodbye to the village. And I'm like, what? Why would you cut that part out? That was so good and essential. I personally thought that was kind of like the heart of the story, is like them figuring out like what she was doing for the villagers, and then like them also saying goodbye to her. I thought that was beautiful, but they don't have that, unfortunately. And I'm like, dang, that really sucks. Zoro's friends are also cut out of the story, and I'm like, dang. But they don't feel as essential to Arlong Park, if that makes any sense. They're just nice characters to have. One character that I was confused on why they cut out, which I do understand now, probably because of budget restraints, is Hachi. Hachi's like the lovable octopus guy who kind of shows you that maybe the Arlong Pirates aren't fully evil, because Hachi's like more like their lovable like side guy, and he's just there, he's just vibing, and then he's like, hey, you want to see Arlong? Sure thing, come aboard. Yeah. Yeah, like Usopp and Sanji kind of feel underdeveloped as Straw Hats in this Netflix adaptation, which I'm like, dang, but at least they get the characterizations down, you know? Luffy, I like the actor. It's just sometimes when he says a line, it doesn't hit as hard, if that makes any sense. But I think that's more like for me. But overall, like, the guy does a really good job, honestly. It feels like he's also kind of being constrained too from like the budget of the CGI, where you don't really see anything above like Gum Gum Pistol or Gum Gum Gatling at the end, or Gum Gum Stomp. He just kind of does like just Gum Gum Pistol, but it seems to be slow enough where everybody usually just grabs his hand, which I think is kind of funny. They're like, ha, that's not gonna work, and then he does it again, and then it hits them, and I think that's also funny. Those are like the things I thought were okay. Another thing I think is interesting is that they make Zoro a lot colder in the East Blue Saga, because there's kind of like moments where I'm like, okay, they should have kept this for the live action just because I think it'd be funny. Yeah, Zoro being a little bit too edgy for me and cold is kind of like, dang, I wish he had more moments to be like goofy. And he does with his directions, but I don't really get a lot of like Zoro laughing, which I'm like, dang. Or him being like more expressive about Luffy doing dumb stuff. I want him to react more to that. But hey, I guess that's just the way the character was in the live action. But for me to give one example, what I think would be sick would be in Baratie when Luffy's being a dish boy. I really wish that like Luffy like threw a booger down in one of Zoro's drinks, and then Zoro noticed it and then like started choking him with the drink. I thought that would have been funny, but you know, that didn't happen, so like we're okay with that. Overall, I think the live action actually does the series justice in a sort of way. Like, it's not perfect, nothing ever is, but it doesn't do a terrible job, especially as like an adaptation in general. I think it does pretty good. It does tell the story of the East Blue. Do I wish it was longer? Of course. Do I wish that some of the plot points were like had more room to breathe, and some of the arc like Arlong Park should have breathed a little more? Of course. But that's just the way it was for this adaptation. And the thing is, it still keeps the heart of the series, and it still keeps the spirit. And I really do hope this adaptation does very well, and we get a season 2, maybe even a season 3. Hope they even go to Skypiea, or even the post-time skip. Who knows? Maybe this does like extremely well. But as an anime Netflix adaptation, it's probably the best anime adaptation I've seen live action, of course. Like Dragon Ball, Avatar The Last Airbender, terrible. I hope that this also re-inspires like companies to make like more live action anime versions of their stories. I hope that this is kind of like opens the door for all those things, because I generally do like the series. This is nice, and I'm curious to see like how they're gonna like continue on with like what they're gonna go with, because like this is the, I'm just gonna say right now, this is the easy part, like what to make live action. Everything else gets goofier, so I'm just curious to see what they do. Honestly, I'd give this thing like a solid 7 out of 10. It has its moments of being like cringe every now and then, sure, but it's fun. We get the Straw Hats doing what the Straw Hats usually do. Zoro getting lost, we get that. Sanji being the simp, of course. Usopp being a coward, yes. Nami navigating and then being angry, yeah. So it captures the spirit of the show. So yeah, 7 out of 10 I think would be like honestly like a solid rating for it. Like, it's not perfect, and there are parts where I don't like as much, and I think it kind of hinders the story, but as like an adaptation, it does it pretty well. Yeah, tell me what you guys think of the series and let me know in the comments down below.